The Guinness World Records isn't just a book. It's a bureaucratic fortress where weird dreams go to die or become legendary. Today, we're peeling back the curtain on the strictly regulated insanity of global records. From the laws of competitive napping to why you can't buy your way to glory, here are 50 rules proving the world is much weirder than you ever imagined. 1. If you're planning to break the record for the most watermelons smashed with your head in your backyard, don't bother pressing record on your iPhone just yet. Guinness strictly mandates that an official adjudicator must be physically present for most high-profile attempts, or you need a small army of independent qualified witnesses. You can't just have your Uncle Gary film it between beer commercial breaks. It's about integrity, people. If a tree falls in the woods and a Guinness official didn't see it, did it even break a record? Would you trust Gary's shaky camera work to validate your legacy? 2. Ever seen a dog ride a bicycle and thought, that's a world record right there? Well, Guinness is ahead of you. They have a massive ban on any records involving animals performing unnatural feats. Essentially, if the animal wouldn't do it in the wild to survive or impress a mate, it's probably a no-go. This is to prevent people from turning their pets into circus performers for 5 minutes of fame. Let's be honest, is your cat really talented, or are you just holding a treat behind the camera? 3. Patience isn't just a virtue, it's a requirement for the Guinness World Records. If you apply for a standard record without paying the fast-track fee, be prepared to wait up to 12 weeks just for them to look at your application. It's like waiting for a government permit, but instead of a building extension, you're asking for permission to be the world's fastest grape eater. By the time they respond, you might have moved on to competitive knitting. 4. There was a time when the book was literally funded by a brewery, yet today, they refuse to track any records involving the consumption of alcohol. You won't find the world's fastest beer chugger or the man who drank the most tequila in an hour here. They scrubbed these to avoid encouraging life-threatening behavior. It's a bit ironic considering the book's origin story, but Guinness has traded the pub vibes for public safety. Do you think removing these vices makes the book more respectable or just less fun at parties? 5. In 1986, a massive balloon release in Cleveland caused a logistical and environmental nightmare, eventually leading to the deaths of 2 people. Guinness took note and promptly banned any record attempts that involve large-scale environmental pollutants or mass balloon releases. If your path to glory involves choking a sea turtle or littering across 3 states, Guinness is swiping left. They want your record to be impressive, not an ecological disaster. It turns out, the most trash created in 10 minutes isn't a title they're looking to hand out. 6. You might think your weirdly long toe is a world beater, but Guinness refuses to track any records based on natural biological phenomena that occur without human effort. You can't get a certificate for having the world's longest natural legs because you didn't do anything to earn them besides exist. They want to see skill, sweat, or a truly questionable level of dedication. If Mother Nature did the heavy lifting, Guinness isn't going to hand you a trophy for it. They are in the business of human achievement, not biological accidents or genetic lotteries. 7. Guinness has a strict no-kids policy for records that could be considered dangerous or inappropriate for minors. You won't find the world's youngest professional sword swallower here. They generally require participants to be at least 16 for anything involving physical risk. It's a smart move to avoid lawsuits and, child endangerment. Sorry, toddlers, you'll have to wait a few more years before you can officially attempt to be the world's youngest person to live in a cave for a month. 8. Guinness frequently retires records that they deem too easy to break or those that have reached a human limit where competition becomes life-threatening. If a record gets broken every 3 days by a different person, they might just close the category forever to maintain its prestige. They want titles that mean something, titles that stay with a person for more than a week of news cycles. It's about excellence, not a revolving door of mediocrity. If anyone could do it with just a single afternoon of practice, Guinness probably isn't interested in printing your name. 9. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but Guinness doesn't have time for your eyes. They strictly forbid any records that are subjective. You can't be the world's most handsome man, or the funniest comedian, because there's no objective way to measure it. If you can't count it, weigh it, or time it, it doesn't exist in their world. It's a cold, hard universe of metrics. Which do you think is harder to achieve? Something you can measure with a stopwatch, or something that requires everyone on Earth to agree you're the best? 10. In an effort to keep their brand family-friendly and avoid being a snuff film in print, Guinness bans any record that requires self-harm or extreme physical suffering that offers no skill. This includes things like the longest time spent without sleep or the most weight lost in a week. They've moved away from the freak show era of the past toward a more athletic and skill-based future. They want you to be a champion, not a cautionary tale for medical students. 11. If you're aiming for a most items eaten record, uniformity is the law. You can't just eat any marshmallows. They must be a specific, commercially available brand and size, documented down to the gram. If one is a millimeter off, adjudicators treat it like a high-stakes crime scene. This pedantry ensures a record broken in Tokyo is the same as one in New York. It's about creating a baseline that someone anywhere can replicate exactly. This strictness turns a simple snack into a grueling, bureaucratic measurement exercise where the only thing bigger than your appetite is the rulebook. 12. For endurance gamers, Guinness has a rigid rest break policy to keep you from literally glitching. For every 60 minutes of continuous activity, you earn 5 minutes of rest. You can use them immediately for a stretch or stack them for a longer nap later. This rule exists because people have pushed themselves to the point of collapse trying to set gaming records without stopping. It transforms the attempt into a strategic battle of sleep deprivation management. You aren't just playing a game. You're managing a biological clock under intense pressure to ensure you survive the leaderboard. 13. Regarding the largest collection, Guinness has zero tolerance for duplicates. If you claim the world's largest rubber duck collection, every duck must be distinct in color, size, or costume. Having 200 identical ducks just means you have a shopping problem, not a record. You must provide a cataloged, photographed list of every unique item. It turns a fun hobby into a military-grade archiving job. Would you have the patience to document 5,000 individual items just for a certificate? Or would you lose your mind before you reach the 1,000th duck? 14. If you want to break a record for playing an instrument longest, you can't just noodle around to kill time. Guinness requires the music played to be recognizable and performed to a professional standard throughout. If you're a drummer, you must keep a consistent beat and play a real repertoire. You can't just hit a cymbal once every 10 minutes while nodding off. They allow short gaps between songs, but those are timed to the second to ensure you aren't cheating your way to a title. It's an exhausting test of both musical stamina and technical precision. 15. For massive group records like the largest gathering of people dressed as dinosaurs, there is a qualified area rule. Every participant must be in a designated controlled zone for the duration of the attempt, usually 5 to 10 minutes. You can't just count random people on a street corner. Official stewards are assigned for every group of 50 people to ensure no one sneaks out or takes off their costume midway. It's high-stakes event management disguised as a massive costume party, where one person's bathroom break can ruin the dream for the entire prehistoric crowd. 16. Speed eating records are a minefield of regulations. One of the most specific rules is the after-time requirement. Once the food is gone, you often must wait up to 30 seconds to ensure it actually stays down. If you perform what Guinness calls a reversal of fortune, a polite term for vomiting, you are instantly disqualified. It's not just about how fast you can shove food in. It's about whether your stomach can handle the biological consequences without a total meltdown. Does the idea of a reversal of fortune make you respect these athletes more, or just feel slightly nauseous? 17. Guinness has a very dim view of records that are too specific. You can't apply for fastest time to run a mile while holding a blue spatula and wearing a tutu on a Tuesday. They call this record fragmentation, and they hate it. They want records to be broad enough that others across the globe actually want to challenge them. If you're the only person who could care about the category, they'll reject it immediately. They want a global competition, not a list of your personal quirks. They prefer records that invite a fight for the top spot, not a lonely victory. 18. For records involving massive objects like the world's largest pizza, the item must be entirely edible and made from traditional ingredients. You can't build a giant pizza out of plastic and put a thin layer of cheese on top to cheat the weight. After measurement, the food must be consumed or distributed to prevent waste. If you make a 3-ton lasagna, you better have a lot of hungry friends or a local food bank ready. They want the spectacle to be real and the aftermath socially responsible. It's a massive feast that requires as much logistics as it does flour. 19. The no firsts rule is a major hurdle for creative types. Guinness rarely accepts first person to do X because they prefer categories like fastest or longest. The logic is that being the first is a one-time event that can never be broken. They want the book to be a living document of human achievement that evolves, not a dusty archive of historical milestones. To get in, you have to do something that someone else can eventually do better, keeping the spirit of competition alive. It's about building a legacy that invites others to try and knock you off the throne. 20. If you're attempting a record involving a vehicle like the fastest lawnmower, the machine must be based on a commercially available model. You can't just build a jet-powered rocket, slap a blade on the bottom, and call it a mower. It needs to retain the core functionality and look of the original machine to qualify. This keeps records grounded in some semblance of reality, even if that reality involves someone going 100 miles per hour on garden equipment. Which household appliance would be the most terrifying to see modified for high-speed racing at your local track? 21. You can't just pinky promise Guinness that you did something amazing. For any attempt not attended by an official adjudicator, you need continuous, unedited video footage. If the camera cuts for even a single second, the record is effectively dead. They need to see every grueling moment from start to finish to ensure no David Copperfield-style trickery occurred during a convenient jump cut. It's not enough to be great. You have to be great on camera without a single blink from the lens. This requirement makes the technical setup almost as stressful as the record attempt itself. 22. If you're trying to set a speed record, the surface matters as much as your talent. Guinness requires a level surface for most running or driving feats to prevent people from just rolling down a steep hill to victory. Gravity is considered cheating in their book. You can't use a tailwind either. If the wind speed exceeds a certain limit, your record is blown away. They want to measure your power, not the power of a hurricane pushing you toward the finish line. It's you versus the clock, and the earth better be perfectly flat under your feet for the duration. 23. While they track the longest time spent awake, they absolutely refuse to track the longest time spent sleeping. Why? Because it's physically impossible to differentiate between a very dedicated napper and someone in a medical coma. Guinness avoids anything that encourages a sedentary or potentially unhealthy lifestyle. Plus, it's just not good entertainment. Watching someone drool on a pillow for 20 hours isn't exactly a feat of human excellence. They want active achievement, not a record for being the world's most successful human sloth. They want the sweat, not the REM cycle. 24. To be crowned the world's oldest person, you need more than just wrinkles and some good stories. Guinness requires airtight genealogical proof, usually in the form of original birth certificates or baptismal records from over a century ago. If your local town hall burned down in 1910, you might be out of luck. They've had to strip titles before when 120-year-olds turned out to be 90-year-olds with very ambitious families. It's a detective job that involves digging through dusty archives just to prove you've survived longer than everyone else. It's the ultimate game of biological last man standing. 25. If you're organizing a mass costume record, like most people dressed as Smurfs, the costume requirements are brutal. You can't just wear a blue t-shirt and call it a day. Every single participant must be wearing the full, recognizable outfit, hat, face paint, and all. If 5 people in a crowd of 5,000 forget their white trousers, the whole attempt can be disqualified. Adjudicators will literally walk through the crowd, pointing out the fake Smurfs like a fashion police force from hell. One lazy dresser can ruin the dreams of an entire stadium of enthusiasts. 26. Guinness has a very strict ban on records based purely on luck. You can't set a record for most heads flipped in a row with a coin or largest lottery win. They want to celebrate human skill, physical prowess, or insane dedication, not the fact that the universe decided to smile on you for 5 minutes. If a monkey could theoretically do it by accident, Guinness isn't interested. They want to see the sweat and the training, not just a lucky roll of the dice. Do you think a record is worth more if it requires a decade of practice versus a 1 in a million stroke of luck? 27. For the LEGO speed building records, you can't just build whatever you want. You have to use a specific commercially available set, and you must start with the bag sealed. If you even pre-sort the bricks into little piles by color, you're disqualified for premeditated assistance. You have to fumble through the plastic bags and hunt for that one tiny gray piece, just like every other frustrated parent on Christmas morning. It's a test of fine motor skills under extreme pressure, where a single dropped brick can cost you the world title and months of preparation. 28. Your record title must be quantifiable and breakable. Guinness won't let you be the world's most creative painter because that's just an opinion, and opinions don't fit into spreadsheets. Every title must follow a strict naming convention that describes exactly what is happening. If it sounds like a weirdly specific academic paper title, you're doing it right. This ensures that when someone in 50 years wants to challenge you, they know exactly what the parameters are. It's about building a structured hierarchy of human weirdness that stands the test of time and scrutiny. 29. If you're going for the longest marathon watching television, you can't just leave the TV on and go to the kitchen for a sandwich. Your eyes must be directed at the screen at all times, and independent witnesses have to monitor your gaze. If you fall asleep for even a minute outside of your designated rest breaks, the attempt is over. It's a psychological torture test disguised as a couch potato's dream. By hour 40, even your favorite sitcom starts to look like a David Lynch nightmare. It takes a special kind of mental fortitude to endure that much mindless content. 30. Guinness is very wary of becoming a free advertising agency for global corporations. You generally cannot set a record for most Pepsi cans opened in a minute unless the brand itself is integral to the challenge, like a Rubik's Cube. They prefer generic descriptions like most soda cans. If your record attempt looks like a blatant marketing stunt for a specific sneaker or energy drink, they will likely reject the category or strip the brand name from the title. They want to protect the integrity of the record from being bought by a clever marketing department with a massive budget. 31. If you're attempting something physically extreme, like being buried alive or sitting in a tank of ice, Guinness requires a medical professional on site to monitor your vitals. You can't just die for a record. That's bad for business. If your body temperature drops too low or your heart rate spikes dangerously, the doctor has the authority to stop the attempt instantly, regardless of your ego. They aren't interested in hosting a tragedy. They want a living, breathing champion. Is the thrill of a world record worth ignoring the frantic warnings of a medical professional standing 5 feet away? 32. For any record involving weight, such as the world's heaviest onion, you can't just use your dusty bathroom scale. The weighing device must be calibrated by a certified professional and possess a valid certificate of accuracy. They often require the scale to be checked both before and after the item is weighed to ensure no accidental adjustments occurred during the process. If your giant vegetable is off by a single gram, that's the difference between legendary glory and a very expensive bowl of soup. They demand scientific precision because, in the world of giants, every milligram is a high-stakes battlefield. 33. For records like longest fingernails or longest hair, artificial enhancements are strictly forbidden. You can't use extensions, acrylics, or any chemical hardeners to boost your numbers. Guinness experts will literally inspect the follicles or the nail beds to ensure everything is 100% organic human growth. If you've spent 20 years growing your hair only to have a technician find a hidden clip-in, your application is shredded immediately. You have to live with the daily nightmare of 3-foot-long nails for decades just to prove your natural dedication. Could you handle the struggle of basic tasks like typing if it meant your name lived forever in a book? 34. This might sound obvious to most, but you absolutely cannot break the law to set a record. If you want to set the record for most skyscrapers climbed, you better have legal permits for every single one of them. Trespassing, reckless endangerment, or any illegal activity immediately voids the entire attempt. Guinness refuses to glorify criminal behavior, so your world's largest bank heist isn't getting a dedicated page. They want heroes and eccentrics, not inmates. This rule forces daredevils to face the most terrifying obstacle of all: local government bureaucracy and zoning laws. 35. Unless the category specifically mentions technology, like fastest robot to solve a Rubik's Cube, the feat must be performed entirely by a human being. You can't use power tools to peel potatoes faster or an AI script to write the world's longest poem. They want to see what the raw human machine can do without the help of Silicon Valley. If you use a mechanical advantage that isn't explicitly allowed in the guidelines, your record is considered a tool-assisted failure. It's a celebration of flesh and bone, proving that even in the age of machines, we still care about human grit. 36. If your evidence, such as newspaper clippings or birth certificates, is in a language other than English, you are responsible for providing certified translations. Guinness operates primarily in English, and they aren't going to hire a translator to verify your local legends. If your documentation is in an obscure dialect, you need a professional to vouch for every single word. This administrative hurdle has stopped many potential record holders from even finishing their application. It's a cold reminder that even the most physical records often come down to how well you can handle a stack of paperwork. 37. For records involving long-term lifestyle choices, like most tattoos or most piercings, Guinness generally won't recognize anyone under the age of 18. They don't want to encourage teenagers to make permanent, radical changes to their bodies just for a shot at 15 minutes of fame. It's a protective measure to ensure participants are adults who can fully consent to the lifelong commitment of being the world's most modified person. You have to wait until you're legally an adult before you can officially turn your skin into a gallery of ink and surgical steel. 38. You can't just use any old spoon to break a record for spoon balancing. Guinness often requires very specific, standardized equipment to ensure a level playing field. If the rules say a standard household chair, you better not show up with a custom-engineered carbon fiber throne designed for balance. They want to know you're better than everyone else using the same junk they have in their kitchen. It makes the feat more impressive when you realize they're using the same flimsy tools as the rest of us. 39. You cannot involve the general public in a way that puts them at risk without their explicit, documented consent. If your record involves driving a car through a crowded square or throwing knives at a random volunteer you found on the street, Guinness will reject it instantly. Every person involved in a potentially dangerous stunt must be a trained professional who knows exactly what the risks are. This keeps the innocent bystander out of the equation and ensures that the only person risking their neck is the one who actually wants the certificate on their wall. 40. For the most expensive burger, or most expensive omelet, the item must actually be on the menu of a real restaurant and available for purchase. You can't just throw a diamond on a piece of toast in your kitchen and call it a record-breaking breakfast. A real customer has to be able to walk in, pay the ridiculous price, and actually consume the meal. This prevents people from inventing imaginary prices for items that never actually sold in the real world. Would you pay $5,000 for a gold-plated burger just to say you ate a world record? 41. Think getting into the book is purely about merit? Think again. While you can apply for free, there is a consultancy side of Guinness that helps corporations break records for marketing. It can cost thousands of dollars to have an adjudicator show up at your corporate retreat. It's essentially the ultimate pay-to-win mechanic for brands. Does it diminish the achievement if a multi-billion-dollar company buys the record for the world's largest taco just for a Super Bowl ad? 42. When you build a world's largest version of a common object, like a stapler or a guitar, it can't just be a massive, hollow plastic shell. Guinness mandates that giant objects must be scaled versions of the original, and crucially, they must actually work. If you build a 20-foot-tall pencil, it better be able to write a very large hello. If it's just a statue that looks like a pencil, it doesn't count. This rule forces builders to be actual engineers, rather than just very ambitious prop makers with too much plywood and paint. Would you trust a bridge built by the same person who made a world record-sized toothpick? 43. For many technical records, Guinness requires expert witnesses. If you're breaking a record in archery, you need a high-ranking official from a National Archery Association to sign off. You can't just have your buddy Mike, who is pretty good at darts, vouch for you. These experts have to provide detailed logs and verify that every rule of the sport was followed to the letter. It adds a layer of professional scrutiny that makes the process feel more like a court trial than a fun stunt. Is there a skill you've mastered so well that a professional judge would be impressed? 44. We've all seen the motorized couches or office desks tearing down a track, but there's a catch. They must remain recognizable as the original object. If you build a motorized toilet that goes 70 miles per hour, it still needs to look like a toilet and, yes, have the functional parts of one. You can't just put a porcelain seat on a go-kart frame. This leads to some truly bizarre engineering where people are trying to make aerodynamically sound furniture. Do you think you could keep a straight face while driving a high-speed leather sofa past a confused highway patrol officer? 45. For mass participation records like the most people high-fiving, Guinness is strict about active involvement. You can't just have 10,000 people standing in a stadium while one guy runs around high-fiving them. Everyone in the group must be actively performing the action simultaneously or in a coordinated sequence. If half the crowd is just checking their phones or waiting for the free t-shirt, the adjudicators will subtract them from the total. It's not enough to just show up. You have to actually participate in the absurdity to be counted as a record breaker. 46. If you're going for the longest marathon radio DJ set, you better have a massive playlist and a lot to say. Guinness has a no silence rule that is incredibly punishing. If there is a gap in the broadcast longer than a few seconds, often just 10 seconds, the record attempt is instantly voided. You can't just play a long instrumental track and take a nap. You have to keep the content flowing, the energy up, and the microphone live. It turns a creative job into a grueling battle against dead air and the overwhelming urge to just stop talking. 47. Want to invent a brand new, never-before-seen category? That's going to cost you. Guinness often charges a significant fee to even consider a new record category that isn't already in their database. This acts as a filter to stop people from submitting thousands of insane ideas like most spiders eaten while skydiving. You have to prove the category has international interest and isn't just a one-off stunt. It's a paywall designed to ensure that only the most dedicated or most eccentric people bother to expand the book's already bloated horizons. 48. Just as giant objects must work, the world's smallest versions must also be fully functional. If you build the world's smallest car, a human, or at least a very specialized remote, must be able to drive it. If you create the world's smallest deck of cards, you must be able to shuffle and deal them, even if you need tweezers to do it. This prevents people from just making microscopic dust motes and calling them smallest everything. It's about the craftsmanship of miniaturization, proving that size doesn't limit the utility of the object. Do you think the challenge of making things tiny is more impressive than the struggle of making them gargantuan? 49. Once a record is in the book, it doesn't stay there forever. Guinness frequently trims the physical book to keep it at a readable size. Just because you broke a record doesn't mean you'll see your face in print next year. You might just exist in their digital database, which is a bit of a bummer for people who want to show off the physical book to their grandkids. They prioritize the most visually stunning or trending records for the print edition. You have to be truly legendary to survive the annual editorial purge of the mundane and the weird. All right, we've covered 49 points and only one remains. But before we get to number 50, it's time for the final verdict. In our opinion, the award for the most incredible rule from today's list goes to the reversal of fortune's speed-eating clause. Why? Because it's the perfect blend of high-stakes competition and biological reality, proving that even in the world of records, you can't argue with your own stomach. Do you agree with our verdict, or did the rule about motorized furniture win your heart? Let us know in the comments. And now, our final number. 50. The final rule is a legacy requirement. The settling of arguments rule. The Guinness Book was originally created to settle bar bets, and they still prioritize records that are definitive. If a record is too complex to explain in a single sentence or requires a PhD to understand, they probably won't include it. They want records that can be discussed over a drink, simple, shocking, and undeniable. It's a return to their roots in a 1950s pub. The ultimate goal is to provide a clear winner so the argument can finally end. These rules prove that the line between genius and total insanity is usually just a very long, legally binding contract. Reaching the top requires more than just talent. It takes a bizarre level of discipline to survive the bureaucracy of glory. If you could have your name in that book forever, what would you want to be known for? Share your wildest ideas in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit subscribe and stay curious.